Have you ever noticed how the endless chase for pleasure never seems to fill that deep emptiness inside? How you can have everything, relationships, experiences, physical satisfaction, and still feel like something essential is missing? Here's the truth no one has the courage to tell you: the pleasure you keep desperately chasing isn't the problem. It's just a symptom of a much deeper hunger your mind is trying to compensate for in any way it can. While you keep looking for answers in the wrong places, your psyche is actually crying out for something completely different from what you imagine. And every frustrated search for satisfaction is, in fact, a disguised sign of awakening that you're ignoring. An entire industry sells you the lie that more pleasure, more intensity, more novelty will finally make you feel fulfilled. But what if I told you that the more you chase it, the emptier you feel? Not because you're doing something wrong or because you're weak, but because you're trying to quench your thirst with salt water, trying to solve a soul-level issue with ego-level solutions. The emptiness you feel isn't a flaw, it's an invitation. It's not a punishment, it's a doorway to deep inner changes you don't even realize are possible yet. And the answer isn't more of the same, but learning to understand the secret language your unconscious uses to communicate what you truly need, turning that seemingly insatiable desire into fuel for an inner transformation that will completely change how you live, love, and relate to everything around you. You know, that energy that wakes you up in the middle of the night with a brilliant idea, or that unexplained urge to create something new. Carl Jung discovered something fascinating about it. The same force that drives you sexually is the very force that fuels every major project in your life. Libido isn't just physical desire, it's a powerful current of psychic energy seeking expression. When you understand this, you're standing at the edge of a true awakening, a new way of seeing yourself. It's as if there's a powerful river flowing inside you, and depending on the channel you give it, that water can become art, healing, deep connection, or profound inner changes you never imagined were possible. Think of that artist who spends sleepless nights creating a masterpiece, or the entrepreneur obsessed with bringing a vision to life. Both are channeling the same vital energy that many people believe exists only in the bedroom. The problem is that most people are trapped in a limited way of seeing things, assuming this force needs to be released only in a mechanical way, when in reality it is fuel for any inner transformation you want to create. This understanding changes everything, because you begin to realize that you were never weak or out of control, you simply didn't know where to direct all that power living inside you. And here's the key insight most people miss: when this energy is repressed or poorly directed, it doesn't disappear, it just finds distorted, often self-destructive outlets. It's like trying to hold water between your fingers. It will leak out one way or another, and it's far better if it flows through channels that elevate you, right? When you start consciously directing this force, it's almost like a shift in awareness, where suddenly you gain access to a creative power that was always there, just waiting to be recognized and used wisely. Now comes the part that might completely change how you see things. That unexplained attraction you feel towards someone may have very little to do with the person themselves. Jung understood that desire is the language your unconscious uses to speak to you, revealing hidden parts of your own soul that need to be integrated. Every person you feel drawn to acts like a mirror, reflecting aspects of yourself that are demanding attention. This is one of the signs of spiritual awakening that most people ignore, choosing instead to blame fate or chemistry. When you feel that rush, that sudden urgency, your unconscious is sending you a coded message about something you've denied within yourself. Imagine that person who completely throws you off balance. Maybe they're extremely confident, deeply sensitive, or embody a kind of freedom you never allowed yourself to have. What's happening beneath the surface goes far beyond physical attraction. You're seeing qualities your own psyche is desperately trying to develop, qualities that were locked away in the basement of your awareness for a reason. This is the hidden language of desire, a form of communication that the Soul Awakening channel explores to help people decode these messages. Because when you understand what your desire is truly saying, you step onto the path of genuine spiritual evolution. Attraction becomes a teacher, not a trap. What's most fascinating is realizing that recurring patterns of attraction, always the same type of person, the same frustrating dynamics, are actually your unconscious being persistent, trying to teach you the same lesson in different ways. It's like ignoring an alarm that only gets louder. Desire keeps pushing you into similar situations until you finally understand what it's pointing to. This awareness opens the door to real emotional and spiritual healing, because you stop being a victim of your own desires and become a curious observer who asks, "What is this trying to teach me about myself?" Have you ever stopped to think about why you can fall deeply in love with someone you barely know, creating an entire story in your mind about who that person is? The truth may be uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. You're not falling in love with the real person, but with an image you projected onto them, as if they were a blank canvas where you paint your ideals, fears, and unresolved needs. This projection is one of the most powerful and misleading mechanisms of the human psyche, responsible for countless relationships that begin like fairy tales and end in disappointment. What Jung discovered is that this process points to deep inner changes that need to happen within you, not in the other person, but few people are willing to admit that. Think about that relationship where you swore you had found your perfect soulmate. That person seemed to complete you in impossible ways, understand you without words, and be exactly what you had always been looking for. What was really happening is that you were projecting aspects of your own unconscious onto them, parts of yourself you don't recognize as your own. The connection felt magical because it was like looking into a mirror without realizing it. This phenomenon is so common that when the relationship moves forward and the real person starts to show up, many people feel that they've changed or that they're not the same anymore, when in fact it's the projection that's falling away. And if you know how to face it, this moment can be the beginning of a radical inner transformation. This is where both the danger and the opportunity lie. When you project without awareness, you become a prisoner of an illusion that will inevitably collapse, leaving you confused and hurt. But when you start to recognize your projections in real time, every relationship turns into a deep journey of self-knowledge, where the other person becomes a mirror reflecting parts of you that were hidden. At that point, the purpose of the soul begins to make real sense, because you realize that no one crossed your path by accident. Each person was bringing a message about who you still need to become. Here is one of the most revolutionary ideas Jung left us. Within every man there is an inner woman called the Anima, and within every woman there is an inner man called the Animus. These are not just abstract concepts, but real psychic forces that shape who you're attracted to, how you relate, and why certain types of people completely mesmerize you. When you ignore these inner aspects, they don't disappear. On the contrary, they begin to run your love life behind the scenes, pushing you to desperately search in the outside world for what should be cultivated within. Recognizing this is a true sign of awakening, because you finally understand that you were looking in the wrong place all along. For men, the anima brings sensitivity, intuition, and the ability to feel deeply, qualities society often teaches them to suppress with phrases like "men don't cry" or "that's not manly." When a man doesn't consciously integrate his anima, he tends to project this inner feminine energy onto real women, idealizing them in impossible ways or, at the other extreme, devaluing them for not being able to fill that inner void. For women, the animus represents strength, logic, direction, and assertiveness, qualities frequently silenced by social expectations of passivity. When the animus is not integrated, it shows up as rigid, critical inner voices or as the search for men who embody the strength she doesn't allow herself to express. And this completely blocks genuine spiritual growth. What's most interesting is that when you begin to work consciously with these archetypes, your relationships change completely. You stop looking for someone to complete you and start looking for someone to share your sense of wholeness with. It's as if you finally realize that the ideal woman or the perfect man you were searching for was actually sleeping inside you all along, waiting to be awakened through deep spirituality and inner work. This process of integration is what truly allows authentic connections to form, because you're no longer desperate for external validation. Instead, you're relating to others from a place of inner fullness and self-grounded presence. Now let's talk about something no one likes to admit, yet it secretly controls a huge part of our decisions: the shadow. That part of you that was pushed into the basement of consciousness because it was labeled shameful, wrong, or unacceptable. When it comes to sexuality, this becomes even more complicated, because we live in a deeply contradictory culture, one that hypersexualizes everything while simultaneously moralizing desire as if it were dirty or sinful. The result? Millions of people pushing their sexual energy into the unconscious, believing they're getting rid of it, when in reality they're just creating a psychological time bomb. What Jung discovered, and what very few people have the courage to face, is that whatever you deny does not disappear. It simply transforms into something darker, more distorted, and more uncontrollable, blocking any real possibility of genuine conscious awareness. Think about someone who spends the entire day policing themselves, suppressing every thought or impulse they judge as inappropriate, convinced that this makes them pure or evolved. Behind the scenes, what actually happens is that all this repressed energy starts leaking out in increasingly problematic ways: compulsive behaviors they don't understand, relationship patterns that repeat like a curse, addictions that seem to appear out of nowhere, or a constant sense of emptiness that no amount of entertainment can fill. Denied sexual energy doesn't evaporate, it ferments in the dark and turns into psychic poison, creating exactly what the person feared most. And the irony is that the more you fight your sexual shadow, the more power you give it, as if you were feeding an invisible monster growing stronger in the darkness. But here's the twist that can change your life: when you find the courage to look directly at your sexual shadow, without judgment and with genuine curiosity, something almost magical happens. You reclaim all the energy that was being wasted on repression and self-sabotage. It's like finally turning on the lights in the basement and realizing the monster was just a pile of old clothes casting strange shadows on the wall. None of it had the power you imagined. This is the essence of the soul rebirth that the Soul Awakening channel speaks about so often. It's not about becoming perfect or pure, but about integrating all parts of yourself, especially the ones you were taught to hate, and transforming them into fuel for emotional and spiritual healing, as well as true personal growth. Forget everything Hollywood taught you about heroism. The real hero is not the one who conquers bodies or collects sexual experiences like trophies on a shelf. The true hero of the sexual journey is the one who has the courage to descend into their own inner hell, face their most painful projections, embrace their most frightening shadow, and integrate the masculine and feminine aspects that culture has torn apart. This journey is not glamorous at the beginning. It is messy, confusing, and often humbling, because it requires admitting that you spent years blaming others for problems that were always your own. Yet it is precisely in this brave descent that the deep inner shifts happen, the kind that separate those who live on autopilot from those who truly take control of their own lives. Jung understood that this journey is not about dominating or repressing desire, but about consciously transforming it from a chaotic, reactive force into directed, creative energy. It's like taking a wild river and building a hydroelectric plant. You're not killing the river, you're channeling its power to light up entire cities. When someone enters this psychological odyssey, every frustrating relationship becomes a valuable lesson, every strange attraction reveals itself as a treasure map pointing to unintegrated parts, and every repeated pattern turns into an opportunity to finally break the cycle. The end result is not the absence of desire, but the presence of awareness, and that completely changes how you relate to people, your projects, and yourself. And here lies the great reward that few reach. When you complete this inner heroic journey, you don't become less sexual or less passionate, you become more authentic, more creative, and infinitely freer. Your relationships stop being battlefields where you project and blame, and turn into genuine encounters between two whole individuals. Your creativity explodes because the energy once trapped in inner conflicts now flows freely into your work and your dreams. This is the kind of inner transformation that allows real psychological maturity, where you finally realize that desire was never your enemy, but a patient teacher waiting for you to learn the lesson. Here is the secret ancient traditions always understood, but modernity has largely forgotten. Sexual energy is not just a primitive biological drive for reproduction, but one of the most powerful and sacred forces available to human beings. When you understand and consciously direct this energy, it becomes fuel for artistic creation, deep psychological healing, and the expansion of consciousness in ways that might seem impossible. Entire civilizations built spiritual practices around this understanding, treating sexuality not as a shameful taboo, but as a bridge between the physical and the transcendent, between the limited ego and the unlimited self. This perspective marks a true awakening into a completely new dimension of human existence, where body and spirit finally stop fighting each other and begin to dance together. Think of the great artists, writers, and creators throughout history. Many of them spoke about this mysterious relationship between sexual energy and creative explosion, as if one directly fueled the other. This is no coincidence. When you learn to work consciously with this vital force instead of simply releasing it in a mechanical way, it transforms into pure inspiration, into visions you couldn't access before, into deep connections that go beyond the physical. This doesn't mean repressing or denying your sexuality, it means elevating it to a level where it becomes a tool for spiritual growth rather than just a pursuit of fleeting pleasure. The Soul Awakening channel has helped many people understand that this energy, when respected and consciously directed, can literally rebuild your life from the inside out. What separates someone who uses sexuality only for immediate pleasure from someone who transforms it into a spiritual force is simple: awareness and intention. When you bring full presence to this energy, when you recognize it as a manifestation of the sacred within you, something fundamentally shifts. Every act becomes a ritual, every connection becomes an opportunity for healing, and every awakening of this force becomes a gateway to expanded states of being. This is true deep spirituality, not the kind filled with moralistic rules and repression, but the kind that recognizes all parts of you as divine, including, and especially, your sexuality, turning it into a path toward soul purpose and a sense of wholeness that integrates every aspect of the human experience. Now that you've gone deep into this Jungian understanding, it's time to turn theory into real practice, because knowledge without application is just mental entertainment. The first radical shift you need to make is to stop seeing your desires as mere physical urges and start treating them as direct messengers from your unconscious, each one carrying valuable information about who you are and who you're meant to become. This means that the next time you feel that unexplained attraction or that strange impulse, instead of reacting automatically or suppressing it, you pause and ask, what is my unconscious trying to show me through this? This simple change in perspective is the beginning of the profound inner transformations that separate those who live on autopilot from those who truly take control of their own spiritual evolution. The second practical step is developing the ability to recognize your projections in real time, and that requires brutal honesty with yourself. When you catch yourself idealizing someone or creating unrealistic expectations, ask yourself, what quality am I seeing in this person that I actually need to develop within myself? It might be vulnerability, courage, freedom, sensuality, or strength, whatever it is, that trait is calling out to be integrated into your own personality. And when it comes to shadow work, it's time to stop sweeping your sexuality and your so-called shameful desires under the psychic rug. Bring light to those darker areas, examine them without judgment, and notice how this acceptance releases an enormous amount of energy that was being wasted on repression and inner conflict, allowing real emotional and spiritual healing to take place. The icing on the cake is learning how to consciously channel all that sexual energy into creative projects and life goals that truly matter to you. This isn't empty mysticism, it's applied psychology, and it genuinely works. That same energy you once spent on distractions or internal battles can be redirected to create art, build businesses, heal relationships, or pursue any goal that makes your heart come alive. When you master this inner alchemy, you're not just improving your sex life or your relationships, you're activating a transformative power that impacts every area of your existence. This is the kind of awakening that truly matters, the kind that doesn't stay stuck in theory but shows up as concrete, measurable results in your everyday life. So after this deep journey through the corridors of the human psyche, what was Jung really trying to tell us about sex and desire? That reducing all of this to biology and animal instinct completely misses the point. It's like looking at a symphony and hearing only noise, or looking at a poem and seeing nothing but letters. Sex and desire are complex languages of the unconscious, monumental psychic forces that quietly shape every major decision you make, every relationship you build, every inner conflict you face. When these forces remain in the dark, unexamined and unintegrated, they literally hijack your life, making you dance to music you don't even realize is playing. This understanding isn't just academic knowledge, it's the difference between living your life and being lived by it, between making conscious choices and being a puppet of impulses you don't understand. The great Jungian revelation is that sexual energy, when finally understood and worked with consciously, stops being a source of conflict and confusion and becomes a driving force for inner transformation and personal fulfillment. This isn't about moralistic repression or reckless indulgence, but about a third path most people don't even know exists: conscious integration. When you stop fighting your desires and start decoding them, when you recognize your projections and reclaim that energy for yourself, when you embrace your sexual shadow and turn it into an ally, that's when you're truly on the path of soul rebirth. At that point, relationships stop being battlefields and become genuine encounters, creativity explodes in unimaginable ways, and you finally experience that sense of wholeness that comes from within, not from external achievements. And here lies the final wisdom that changes everything. Sex was never just about momentary pleasure or physical satisfaction. It has always been about psychic power, spiritual energy, and the limitless potential for self-realization. Ancient traditions knew this, Jung rediscovered it, and now you know it too. The real question isn't whether this information is true, but what you're going to do with it. Will you continue to be unconsciously controlled by forces you don't understand, or will you embark on this heroic journey of integration and transformation? Because in the end, as the Soul Awakening channel always reminds us, the purpose of the soul isn't to deny your humanity, including your sexuality, but to consciously elevate it to a level where body, mind, and spirit finally work together in perfect harmony. So let me ask you something. After everything you've just discovered, are you going to remain an unconscious slave to your own desires, or are you finally going to take control of this powerful energy within you? Because now you know the truth, every attraction you feel, every emptiness you try to fill, every pattern that keeps repeating is your unconscious sending you urgent messages about who you need to become. The question that won't go away is this: do you have the courage to look inward and do the hard work of integration, or will you keep blaming circumstances, other people, and fate for an emptiness that only you can fill? Think about it with me. How many opportunities for spiritual growth have you wasted by not understanding this language? How many relationships could have been portals of transformation but became nothing more than painful repetitions? And most importantly, how much longer are you going to ignore the signs of spiritual awakening your psyche sends you every single day? Because the truth is, you can have all the knowledge in the world, watch 1,000 videos, read 1,000 books, but if you don't apply it in practice, if you don't truly dive into shadow work, if you don't consciously channel this vital energy, nothing changes. The emptiness remains, the patterns repeat, and 5 years from now you'll still be searching outside yourself for what has always been inside, waiting to be discovered. This is the kind of knowledge that has the power to trigger a true rebirth of the soul, but only if you have the courage to step out of your comfort zone and actually apply it. So don't let this video be just another piece of content you consume and forget. Use it as fuel for real awakening, as a map to navigate the deep territories of your own unconscious. And if you want to continue on this journey of emotional and spiritual healing and deep spirituality, subscribe to the Soul Awakening channel and turn on notifications, because every week there's new content unlocking the mysteries of the psyche to help you transform chaotic desire into directed power, confusion into clarity, and emptiness into wholeness. The final question I leave you with is simple but devastating. Will you be the hero of your own journey, or will you keep playing a supporting role in the life that could truly be yours?